Hey guys, today we're going to make vegan meatballs with sweet potatoes. Hey guys, Daniela here at Sita Soul. Today we're making vegan meatballs with sweet potatoes and quinoa. And we're also making a cashew yogurt tzatziki sauce. This is a really delicious meatball recipe. It doesn't make you feel like you're not getting like a real meatball. And it's so much better than using the faux meats. And this actually has really high protein and it has a lot of flavor. And you can also customize it to your tastes. You can add different vegetables to it if you want for a little crunch. You can also add different spices. Today we're going to add a little bit of sumac, which is one of my favorite spices. It's actually from a berry. The first thing we're going to do for this meatball recipe is prep our sweet potato, because it takes a little while. So we're first going to, I don't know if you guys know this, but the little tags on the produce, you can actually put them in the compost. I didn't know that until recently. And then what I usually do is I peel and then I wash my produce. This is a great peeler too. Prefer these to the metal ones. And we're also going to get our quinoa cooked, and I've been told I make the best quinoa. I have a few tricks that I'm going to share with you today. And quinoa is also one of the most amazing grains. It's actually not a grain, it's classified as a fruit. And don't feel like you have to get them like completely peeled, just enough so that most of the flesh is ready. So, all right, so all the scraps, if you have compost, great. If not, no judgment, just throw them into the garbage. So now we're gonna wash our potato. So we're gonna chop the sweet potatoes so it's easier to boil. The smaller the dice, the faster it'll boil. And as far as knives, I don't know what you guys use at home, but I really like this is a Japanese knife. Japanese or German typically are some of the best. This is a great tool too that I love to use for picking up ingredients, cleaning the cutting board. A lot of chefs have them in our kitchens. So we're gonna throw the sweet potato into the pot and get it on a nice boil. We don't have to use the whole thing for this recipe, but you can, just depending on how much you're going to be eating. I like to also put a little salt in my water when I'm boiling. Adds a little flavor. All right, and then we can roast these up or make a mash out of them. You got options. All right, so next we're going to make our quinoa. And I always turn on the stove first to get the pan nice and warm. And then we're going to add our oil. For the quinoa, we're going to add some of our grapeseed oil. And then we're going to make 1 cup of quinoa. And I like to toast it so it gets nice and coated. You can do this with any grain, so it's nice and toasted. Also, I add a little salt to my quinoa. You can also add a little bit of lemon. And then when I make quinoa, we do 1 to 1. So we have 1 cup, so we're gonna do 2 cups of water. You can also make this with vegetable broth. Adds a little bit more flavor. And one thing I like to do with all my scraps for making, when I use vegetables, is make a vegetable broth out of it. You kind of just have a pot going when you're cooking, and you'll have a nice broth instead of having to buy it in the market. So we're gonna get this to a boil, and in the meantime, we'll make our tzatziki, which is good on pretty much anything. So we have our coconut yogurt. There's many different brands on the market. Find one that you love the most, and we're going to add to it some salt. I would say about, depending on how much, like per cup, about a ½ teaspoon. A little bit of black pepper. We're gonna add some olive oil. And I love to add some nice lemon. One trick too, if you don't want the lemon seeds to fall in, is you squeeze over your hand and all the seeds will just kind of stay, and then the liquid comes through. So one variation on this is, I sometimes use dill, but we also have some fennel here. And the fennel tops are beautiful and they taste really good, and then it's nice color. So we're gonna add some of those. Because a lot of people don't like dill, I have to say. As a chef, I've encountered that many times, more than people like it. So I try not to add too much. And we also have some beautiful cilantro. If people are not into cilantro, you don't have to add it. And we're gonna add also some parsley. All right, so if you can see, we have a nice, beautiful bowl. Let's mix it up. All right, so our tzatziki is ready. We're also going to ground up some oats. And you'd wonder, why are we putting oats in meatballs? So this acts as a binder instead of eggs. It just adds a nice, kind of stickiness. So our quinoa is starting to boil. So once it gets to a boil, you want to turn it down to a nice simmer. And the sweet potatoes are taking a little longer. All right, so we got our oats in our grinder, and we're gonna get them nice and finely ground. Check it out, make sure it's nice, fine. Yeah, it's looking good. Do one more pulse. All right, so I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So it looks like a nice flour, and then oat flour is really delicious for other baked goods. You can, has really nice consistency to make all kinds of like breads. You can use them to make, you can also actually, with the Moroccan bread, you can use some oat flour. And if you wanted, you could add chickpea flour for a nice protein. So the next thing we're going to do is add some spices. So this is sumac. It's a beautiful red spice, comes from a berry. Has a nice like kind of tangy flavor. Very common in Persian cooking. Across the Middle East it's popular. So we're gonna add about, I'd say a nice teaspoon. We're also going to add about a teaspoon of salt. You can always add a little more too. And then we're going to add some lemon. Use the rest from making the tzatziki, and then we'll add some more. Remember our technique? And we're gonna throw our oats in. We're gonna chop up a little bit more parsley. So if you can see here, it's getting nice and colorful. We're waiting for everything else to come out, but let's check on our quinoa. See, it's nice and almost done. It's about maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. The sweet potatoes, let me check on those too. What I like to do to check to see if they're ready is I take a fork or a knife and just poke it, make sure they're not overcooked, because we're making them into a mash, but we're also gonna cook it again, so they don't have to be like super, super soft. So these are about, they're coming along, I would say about maybe 5 more minutes, and then we can go ahead and mash them. And this is coming along too, so we're almost ready to throw them into the bowl. So I'm curious also how many people are going to be having a totally vegan Thanksgiving this year. That's quite a challenge, but also takes away from the stress of having to cook a turkey, which I appreciate. So our quinoa looks like it's done. So I give it a nice stir, and then I take it off the stove and let it chill for a little bit. Perfect quinoa. You see it's nice and fluffy. All right, so we're now going to add the rest of our ingredients for our sweet potato quinoa meatballs. You can see here, this is the perfect quinoa. Boom. We're gonna add this to our mixture that we started. And then we're going to get our sweet potatoes. We're gonna drain them first. Sweet potato, look at that beautiful, beautiful orange. So we need to mash it before we add it. If you have a masher, awesome. If you don't worry about it. You can use your hands, you can use a fork, and I'm gonna start with just a few at a time. All right, so mashing the potato. This is one of the most nourishing things to eat. I actually learned that Audrey Hepburn, she used to always eat a sweet potato before she went out to dinner. I wonder if she was trying to keep her weight down or not, but it's definitely very healthy. So, got our sweet potato. Yeah, this is the perfect mash. It's nice and mashed. Okay, let's see. I would say as the rule of thumb, you can add about the same amount of quinoa and sweet potato. And the sweet potato is also gonna help with binding everything together. So just naturally, but also the oats are gonna help a lot. See this beautiful color? It's like, wow, it's very, very fall. We have our green, we have some orange. This is perfect for a Thanksgiving meal. If you're wanting to make these or something special for Christmas. So they're getting nice and formed, and we're gonna start making our meatballs in just a moment. So to make the meatballs, what I suggest, you have a couple options. One is you can pan fry them a little bit and then throw them into the oven, or you can just do a straight bake. Today we're just gonna bake them, but you have the option also to pan fry as well. So it's a nice and formed, beautiful batter. And we're going to put them onto some parchment paper so it doesn't stick. And you have the option of, you can do it straight just with your hands, or you can use one of these, especially if you want to portion them out, if you're making them for meal prep or whatnot. So you do a nice round, and then so that doesn't stick to your hands, I like to put a little oil. You can also use gloves. I know because of COVID, a lot of people have gloves in their house, and this is a nice way to use your gloves. So got our first meatball, and you see, you can't really feel it, but if you can tell, it's the perfect texture. This is not gonna fall apart. And if you don't have quinoa, you can make them with different grains. You can use millet. You could also use brown rice. And I honestly think that these would be very, very good for pretty much everyone in the family. Kids definitely love sweet potatoes. It's one of the first foods a lot of kids will eat when they're a baby. These would also be good as, like we talked about, you could make them into a nice burger. But I would say if you make a burger, I would probably make them a little smaller so they stay formed. But I think with enough oat flour, they should stay intact. All right, we got one more, and then we're gonna throw these in the oven. I don't know about you, but I'm very excited about these. They look very delicious. All right, so one of the benefits also of not using egg is that we don't have to worry about any raw ingredients not cooking. This recipe makes, I would say, about almost 20 meatballs. And our oven is preheated to 400. We're gonna pop these in and do a timer for about 20 minutes and check them and see how they're looking. I would say we'll probably need about 30 minutes or so to get a nice, more like crispy outside. All right, we're back and it's time to eat our beautiful meatballs that we made from quinoa and sweet potato. And we have this delicious tzatziki that's been marinating in the fridge with cashew yogurt. So these actually turned out even better than I thought they would. They look incredible. So I'm gonna plate a few, and we have the tzatziki and some herbs. There we go, check that out. All right, time to taste. Woohoo! Really good. Wow.